Good afternoon, guys. We'll get started in just a minute. See some people joining in. Just give them a couple more minutes. See a couple more people, a couple of thumbs up. Some exciting updates, some interesting updates. And I think we'll get started. We'll get rolling right now. So, good afternoon, everyone. As you'll notice, I'm leading this AMA today. It's me, Shabir. Many of you are aware. I lead up marketing and sales initiatives here at Sparkster as VP. Um, you'll notice that Saj isn't here with us today, so I just wanted to brief you on that. If you haven't heard as of yet, Saj is attending to a very dear relative of his from his immediate family who's in hospital, his mom. So we are sending our prayers, our thoughts, in our mind, all the best vibes and to him in this time, this difficult time. So he's in our thoughts, and so I want you to keep that in mind, and please do keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Um, Having said that, I also have a very important announcement and actually a very exciting announcement to make here and to make you all aware of. So Sparkster Labs out of Cambridge has made a very important and strategic hire. And that's what I wanted to share with you. We've actually at Sparkster Labs of Cambridge has actually hired on board a Oxford graduate with 30 years of software experience, working at companies like UBS, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, Nokia out of Finland, as well as several other prominent companies, as well as IBM. That is Robert Aston Dive. He has joined the Sparkster Labs team that will be headed out of Cambridge. So it's a very, very exciting development for Sparkster Labs. 30 years of experience in software at the highest level with some of the most prominent companies in the world. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. There will be an announcement that is pending agreements from lawyers and the contractual paperwork that has to be done, as you're aware. As soon as that is taken care of, there will be an announcement that will be put out with respect to that. So that's very exciting news that is happening on that front. Having said that as well, I want to shed some light today on a lot of what I do with Sparkster in my capacity as vice president. Much of my day is spent focused predominantly, amongst other things, but primarily upon sales and marketing. That's what I'm working on tremendously. And that's really ultimately getting the customer base for our company. And that entails a few things, and I want to shed light on that today. Sales and marketing is an extremely important part of a startup, a technology company, and that's really what I spend a lot of my effort on a day-to-day basis. So I want to shed a little bit of light on what I'm working on and what we're actually focused on in the next few months to years, and what's our plan on that front. Strategy is extremely important, particularly as a growing startup, a budding technology company. You want to make sure that the decisions you make are calculated, are strategic in nature, so that you're not just making guesses, you're actually making rigorous, robust decisions that lead to the ultimate success of the firm at large. And that's really what I'm focused on a day-to-day basis. Having said that, when I attended ARM TechCon and I spoke there towards the end of last year, as many of you will recall, that shed light on a hypothesis that we had and actually were spot on, fortunately, to our understanding. That is the fifth wave of computing. And that was the emphasis of this technology conference, amongst many others that were happening in Silicon Valley in around that time. And the fifth wave of computing is really where a lot of that interest is in the next years and months to come. And that is segmented into three particular avenues that I want to draw your attention to. That includes AI, artificial intelligence, 5G, LTE, 5G speeds in the telecom industry, as well as IoT, the Internet of Things. Now, this is a tremendously large opportunity, and it's a very, very large market. We're talking about multi-billion and to the trillions in the long run. And companies as large as ARM and the likes have come to the conclusion and understood that this is not a problem that any one particular company can solve by itself. Rather, it requires collaboration. It requires for different entities, different companies, different organizations, different institutions to all come together to deliver this fifth wave of computing. It also taught us, and it also made it extremely clear by validating an assumption that we understood that the edge computing is what the industry is moving towards, which validated assumption, and also that edge computing will be intelligent at the edge. Very important point to note. So how does this all tie in with the sales and marketing strategy? Well, it's very important as a startup, a technology company, to make sure that you validate these assumptions so that you're not making a product at the end of the day that there's not enough people to buy. You want to make sure that the assumptions that you make are validated and are very strategically placed. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, in terms of strategy, there's a few different models that one can follow. There's a strategy that many times that you may have seen alluded to in our previous discussions and our previous AMAs. These are frameworks that are developed and used by institutions such as MIT and Stanford and some of the leading entrepreneurial schools of thought. And what that leads to is disciplined entrepreneurship. So that's what we're focused on here at Sparkster, disciplined entrepreneurship. And this is stuff that is followed by Steve Jobs. It was followed by him and many other technology companies out of Silicon Valley. And that entails market segmentation. So it's very important to focus on market segmentation as well as product market fit. I want to shed light on both of these things in the next few moments. In terms of product market fit, what is that for those of you who may not be familiar? One of the most important things for a budding technology company is to make sure, or any company for that matter, is to make sure that you have product market fit. It's extremely important. And what that means is that you find and you identify market demand. That means, what is it that people want? And you identify a gap that's in the market. And once you identify that gap in the market, you create a product that fills that gap. And then, and only then, do you really have a product that people want to buy, that solves a hair on fire problem that people are really excited about. Many times, startups fail and entrepreneurial ventures and technology companies fail because they have not nailed product market fit. They have not identified product market fit accurately, and they've not done a good job in that phase of product market fit. And what ends up happening ultimately is you create this product that you thought there was demand for, and there was ultimately no demand for it. And that product ultimately failed, and hence the company failed. What we are creating a revenue pipeline. That's my day-to-day job here at Sparkster, is to create a revenue pipeline to make sure that when we have our product done, there is a line out the door that is banging on our door trying to buy this product, as opposed to having just a few people who want to buy it, or nobody for that matter. This is a really, really important point to identify and note. So I am spending a lot of my time developing and building relationships with executives in Fortune 500 or big capacity and prominent companies, or infrastructure companies as well. This is where a lot of the marketing initiatives and a lot of the marketing efforts are being placed today. Developing, building relationships, validating assumptions, making sure that it's very clear what we're offering, and we're solving a problem, and we're creating a product that the market actually demands and is actually in need of. And so we've also collaborated, and I'm excited to tell you, we've collaborated with a major Fortune 500 corporation. Due to NDAs, I can't mention the name as of yet, but in the near future, that will become known to you as well. And what we're doing here is we're validating our assumptions further to make sure that we're solving those problems that are actually the market need. And so, if I can give you an example of product market fit and where it works and where it may have gone awry and how big of an impact this is. So, an example of a successful product market fit would be something to the effect of Android. So Android was something that emerged in the wake of the Apple iPhone. So when the Apple iPhone, if many of you will remember, when it came out back in 2007, around that time frame, when the Apple iPhone came out, they had integrated hardware and software, and so they brought out this phone. And many of you will remember the famous statement of people like Steve Ballmer and others who were saying that, this is a very expensive product, who's going to pay for it? And people were paying for it, people were buying it. But at the same time, there was a segment of the market that said that, we don't want this, for example, very expensive product, that's the iPhone at that time at least. And we don't want something that's not customizable. We don't want something of that nature. We want something that we can customize, we have ownership over, that's not that expensive. So on the sideline were these other cell phone manufacturers or these mobile phone manufacturers, such as Ericsson or the likes. Many of those, Sony and those companies, Huawei also emerged, and many of these companies emerged. And then came Android into the picture that Google acquired and said that, we're going to meet this need. And because of them meeting this need, cell phones, in particular smartphones, touchscreen smartphones, became ubiquitous across the globe. People all across the globe had these. This was product market fit at its best where it worked. Where did product market fit, for example, not work? One example of this is actually the crypto industry itself. Back in 2017, there was this realization or this understanding that banks, corporations, industries, everyone will adopt blockchain, will adopt the cryptocurrencies, everyone will rush to, and there will be this long line that's banging on the door of cryptocurrencies. Fast forward to the late 2018, as well as 2019, that didn't come to be true. There was a line, but it wasn't a forceful line. This is where product market fit can go awry. In 95% plus of startups ventures, in technology companies and entrepreneurial ventures, the second or the latter case that I just alluded to, that happens. That people did not focus on product market fit. Now, am I saying that in the crypto space in the future is that that adoption is not going to occur, that growth is not going to occur? I'm not saying anything of that sort. It may very well do that. However, product market fit requires validation of assumptions. And this takes time in terms of developing relationships with executives, with leaders in the telecom space, for example, in the IoT space, for example. And this is what I do on a day-to-day basis. Develop these relationships with infrastructure companies in the telecom space, for example, in the 5G that I was alluding to earlier, as well as people who are in the IoT space as well. So it's very important to develop these relationships and then discover those customers out of those relationships, what emerges. And if you nail that and you actually focus upon that, you have a much stronger ability as a corporation to succeed because you're solving a real world problem that people have. You're solving a hair on fire problem that people have. And this is what's the most important component. And so we've, as I mentioned, collaborated with Fortune 500 company to meet this ends. Also on a tangential but separate component, we have Sparkster Labs out of Cambridge that has made the major hire, and ultimately these things coming together, although at some difference capacity in tangential nature, they're coming together to give rise to that component at large. This is really important to note. So we have our heads down and we're working day in and day out to solve those problems and solve those challenges as much as possible. And it does take a bit of time to develop these relationships, but once they are developed, they're much more substantive and meaningful in nature. Business in terms of being transactional in nature, is very short-lived. And we're playing a longer game here. We're playing for the next 10, 15, 20 years as a corporation. We're trying to establish ourselves at that level. So a lot of my emphasis is focused on that on a day-to-day basis. And it is rigorous, and this is a very important time because we cannot rush the revenue pipeline development phase and the customer discovery phase. Because if we do that, that ends up to leading us to a position where we end up rushing to market. And when you rush to market, you end up with a product that necessarily has not been validated appropriately. And when it's not been validated appropriately, what ultimately ends up happening is you risk the viability of the company in the long run and the corporation in the long run. Having said that, and shedding some more light on our strategy, I want to perhaps take some questions from the team here, from our community, and let's see what we've got. So I'm seeing some traffic here. Just checking into the Telegram. If you have some questions, please do post them in the Telegram. I'll pick them up from here. See if I can get some here. Let's check some on my phone, maybe. So marketing, I'm seeing a lot of, I've seen a lot of question. I've heard a lot about marketing. So I want to make it very clear that rest assured, we're focusing tremendously on marketing. As I mentioned, I'm reaching out personally to executives and prominent infrastructure companies and prominent Fortune 500 companies to develop those relationships, and we're marketing. One point that I do want to draw your attention to and everyone's attention to here is, in terms of marketing, you want to make sure that those assumptions are validated first. And this is how everything ties together. You want to make sure that those assumptions are first validated. Once those assumptions are validated, then you want to scale that marketing to happen. But what ends up happening if you prematurely start spending on marketing, you waste time, energy, and ultimately money and capital if you haven't validated your assumptions first. There's a very, very famous saying in marketing that half of your marketing is working, the other half isn't. You just don't know which half. Now, with data and analytics today, that's a bit more, it's a bit better of a space. But at the same time, if we end up spending a lot of money on marketing for a market that's not interested in the product or is not there, that's capital, that's time, that's energy, that's actually wasted. So our plan is to actually identify, validate our assumptions. Once those assumptions are validated and we've realized that we have something similar to the Android example that I had given earlier, then to spend and our capital, time, and energy to scale that to a point that we succeed, and to a point that we actually are more prudent in our approach, because prudency is our main focus. You want to make prudent decisions. You don't want to make decisions that are naive, that are not well thought out. Strategy is very important. I want to draw your attention to something that Jeff Bezos said, that him and his leadership team, he says, their job and their focus, pardon me, is to make sure that they make a small number of high quality decisions on a day-to-day basis. We find ourselves in a similar space. In addition to working and putting our head down and making sure that we work day in and day out to deliver these things, we have to make sure that we're making high quality decisions. I believe the number that he said was 3, just limited to 3 decisions that are high quality in nature. And that's really where the strategic decision making comes into play. So let me take a look at a couple of these other components and some other questions that are coming in on Telegram. See some more here. Okay. So just a few more questions here. To the holders. That's right. So strategic, I'm noticing. So strategic partnerships are a main emphasis for us right now. This goes back to ARM TechCon. ARM TechCon is where we spoke. If you remember, at Q4 of 2018. Um, it's very clear amongst industry leaders that the fifth wave of computing, that which entails AI, 5G, IoT, it's not something that any one individual can accomplish themselves. It's going to require a collaborative effort. And because of that, we've realized and we have continued to foster substantive, meaningful relationships. And that's really what we're focused on as a company. And so, alluding to the Telegram, this is absolutely correct. We're focused on strategic partnerships in order that when the wave arises, when in the next year or two or the next coming months, we are at the forefront of thought leadership in that space. And that's really important. Being a thought leader is what's going to make us the firm that we aspire to be. We're not trying to be on the fringes. We're actually leading up to that. And that's where making these substantive partnerships, such as the one with the Fortune 500 company that we've collaborated with. And then this will lead to product development going in tandem with revenue pipeline development. If you don't build the relationships and if you don't build the partnerships, what ends up happening is you have this product that is phenomenal, but at the end of the day, what ends up happening is there's no customer base that is there to support that. And what ends up happening is you spend a lot of time, energy, and capital on this technology that nobody wants to buy. And that's what we are making sure does not happen. And we're making sure and putting every effort possible to ensure that we have this product that is met by a tremendous revenue pipeline of people who are very eager to adopt and purchase this product and utilize it as much as possible. And that's really what ultimately comes down to. The majority of entrepreneurial ventures, startups in the technology space fail because they do not nail market segmentation and they do not accurately assess product market fit. Y Combinator is very adamant about this topic as well, that many people try to use these fluffy terminologies with respect to product market fit, whereas the definition is very clear. It's identifying a gap that's in the market, meeting that in a way that people are actually voting with their wallet and coming to buy that product right away. It's not something that, think about for a moment how many apps you may have downloaded on your phone throughout the time. Many apps you don't use on a day-to-day basis. And the reason people don't use it is because it's an app that, for example, people like. It's okay. They liked it at one point in time, but doesn't necessarily solve a hair on fire problem for people that they're having. There are certain apps on your phone that you may use every single day. Similarly, we're trying to solve problems that are hair on fire problems that people really have in the world, and solve it in a way that people don't just use the product for 1 or 2 or 3 days. Rather, they're using it for months and years to come. And that happens by validating the assumptions, making sure the strategic hypotheses that we're making are accurate, there is demand, and all of that culminates with the strategy of product development aligned with and in parallel with revenue pipeline generation. Let's see if I can take one more. I'm seeing some comments about the strategy, why people got involved in the project in the first place, and I'll take this perhaps as a last question. I believe, if I recall correctly, most of the people who actually got involved in the project in the first place understood that from a strategic standpoint, from day one, Sparkster was much more prudent than other companies in terms of making sure that what we were solving were problems for the real world and not just problems that people, for example, are pie in the sky dreams, for example, or people are just nice to haves. We're actually trying to identify what is a need in the market and how is it possible to meet that need to ensure that we have a viable corporation in the future, a viable company and firm in the future for the long run. And I think that's really what drew people's attention to the project. So it's very exciting times. We want to make sure that we get this right, and rest assured, myself and our team is working very diligently around the clock to meet that demand and make sure that we identify and make sure that we make the right decisions as a corporation. not only now but in the future. This work that we're putting in will pay its dividends and pay its dues in the future, and we're well aware of that. So I want to reiterate the announcement, the very exciting announcement that Sparkster Labs out of Cambridge has made a very exciting hire with Robert Aston Dive, who will be leading the Cambridge Labs, the Sparkster Labs Cambridge initiative. There, he's an Oxford graduate. He's somebody who has worked with some of the top firms in the world, 30 years of experience. He's worked with the likes of the UBS, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, so many other prominent companies, Nokia, IBM. And also at this time, we definitely want to keep Saj and his family in our thoughts and prayers. Going through this difficult time, he's in the hospital. So please do that. Bear that in mind. And I want to thank you all for your support. You've been phenomenal. I have the most respect, love, admiration for our community, and it's one of the most vibrant communities. I also want to thank our admins for their continued work and how much effort they've been putting around the clock to help. So I'm really, really, really grateful for all that's going on. Having said that, I want to draw this AMA to a conclusion, and I look forward to seeing and speaking with you very soon. Thank you so much.